Mervyn.
Then I think it's 6.
Okay.
Hello, Uncle Mervyn, Auntie Jackie, my dad Barry, my Uncle Ian, and anybody else who I can't see on this.
Hello.
Hi, everybody from San Diego.
From London.
Hi.
Scottish Hell in Jerusalem.
The last railway station in England. From tip to tip. The last railway station in Africa.
Stephanie, does that mean you're in Scotland?
No, I am in Penzance, Cornwall, the furthest west, the last railway station in England. No, it's the last railway station in Scotland. It's in Cinnabar in 2018. So I really cased the joint in Muizenberg, and yeah, so very happy to be really.
I'm gonna mute everybody. Okay, sorry to have muted everybody, but it is 4 o'clock and I like to start on time. So first of all, you can say hello at the end. There will be time for comments. I know that I heard San Diego, London, Jerusalem, obviously Cape Town, Johannesburg, 7 a.m. I'm sure we've got some 1 a.m.s as well. Welcome everybody. The Muizenberg community at the moment, and different faces from around, most of them that I don't know, but I'm just to see people. I got a comment this morning from someone asking for someone else for you, Ian, who's one of the speakers' email addresses. He hasn't heard or seen Ian in 55 years. That was the email that I got this morning. And that's what this is all about. People connecting to each other and being a part of each other's lives from a distance past, but one that was so close to people's hearts. I'm going to introduce the first speaker, Lolita Erin. She's speaking from Vancouver, Canada. Her topic is pretty much from the Congo to Muizenberg with other places involved. She'll explain all those things. A little bit about her. Lolita Erin spent 8 years in Muizenberg, graduated from Muizenberg High School in 1956, trained as a preschool teacher at Berkeley House, and taught for 10 years in the Hebrew Nursery School Association. She moved to Sea Point, where she met her husband, Jack Erin, widowed from his wife, Shirley. She helped raise their 3 daughters. They also had a son together. They have 5 grandchildren ranging from 32 years old to 14 months, Mazel Tov, for all of them. Moved to Canada in 1979, taught at the Talmud Torah in Vancouver, retired from teaching and became a garden designer for a decade, designing and installing gardens in the Vancouver area. Whoever's been to Vancouver, it is gorgeous. Retired from that and trained at a bedside hospice volunteer and healing touch practitioner at a Vancouver hospice. Lives with Jack and Chili Pepper. They're 11 while I was speaking, there's 7 people who joined. There are now 70 people here, so welcome all who's here. And Lolita, please just unmute yourself, and I'm going to make you the spotlight, and then please begin.
Hi, everybody. I'm sorry that I'm not wearing a mask. I would look much better with one, but anyway, there's no need to do that. So here goes. I realize that these are the musings of an old lady and her old man. We've been around for a long time, and it looks as if a lot of the people on this screen are much younger than we are. So please bear with these old folks.
Mere kids.
Who, in the middle of the night in Vancouver, in the midwinter, when it is really cold and miserable, and we can't sleep, we often say to each other, let's go for a walk in Muizenberg. So I'm inviting you to join us, and this is really what we have done from time to time. Forgive me, but I'm going to read some of my notes. When my husband Jack and I have trouble sleeping on long midwinter nights, he and I have taken nostalgic virtual walks in Muizenberg, conjuring the images of its geography. We begin at the high school where we both attend school. Jack was there. We weren't there at the same time because, as you can see, he's 10 years older than I am, and I'm only 81, so you can figure the math. So we walk down the hill past the tennis courts on the left, cross the main road, make a right on, is it York Road?
Yes.
Yes, York Road, past Shagham's Chemist, past the CNA. There was a little grocery store where we would stop in and buy a little treat, walk down to past the booms, cross the station, not the station, the railway line. And I remember distinctly the sound of the click of that gate. It would be a very memorable click that's still in my mind. We'd cross that and there was Kent's, the marvelous store where we had to pop in there just to get the smell of those floorboards and the textiles. And then past Danker's, past the Bioscope, the Empire Bioscope, where we were entertained every Saturday, swapped comics. Jack had his first date with Yvette Brody.
I was 8.
He was 8 years old, and his dad gave him a shilling and he bought her a twisty for 8 cents. Very romantic. Then there was a lane in front of Kent's, and we would walk down that lane, and that is where our family doctor, Eugene Tucker, practiced his medicine. Anyway, we would walk down past the cinema, past Gitlin's, past Norman's, where nobody needs to be reminded of what amazing hot dogs they had at Gitlin's. Then we would walk past the Balmoral Hotel and cross the Balmoral onto the beach to look at the photo display taken by all those very dashing beach boys who were older than us, to just check out to see if our pictures were on that wall. Then we'd walk past Reichland's, past the Balmoral, the windy Balmoral corner, past Reichland's chemist, and remember all the people in those chemists, and then walk down the road. And very often, I would have an image of Dudley Friedman walking with his dog Rusty, a very dashing figure. He had a very noble walk, and that's what he would do. He would walk, and we would greet each other. And then we would reach Westbury Road, which was the road where Mrs. Hirschfeld had her Continental guest house. And my family and I actually stayed there. Mrs. Hirschfeld was the owner, and she had a lovely little girl called Ellen, who became my friend. And Mrs. Hirschfeld invited me on the very first day that we arrived in her Continental guest house.
From the Congo.
From the Congo to, thank you, Jack, to a party at Barbara Klugman's house. I didn't know any of these people, and Barbara Klugman was having a party that very Saturday night. I was 12 years old, and I think those girls were a little older than I was, maybe a year. And my father, who was standing beside, said, "What kind of a party would that be?" And Mrs. Hirschfeld explained that it would be very nice. Mr. and Mrs. Klugman would be there supervising. There'd be cool drinks and treats, and they'd play records, and there'd be dancing. And he said, "Dancing? Boys and girls dancing together?" And she said, "Yes." My father allowed me to go on condition that I was not to dance with any boys. So I went, and I was dressed for the party. I wore a navy blue dress with long sleeves, a little white cotton Peter Pan collar with a red spotted bow, black lace-up shoes, and white cotton socks. Get the picture? Could there be anything more nerdy than that? That is what I wore. Mrs. Klugman, who was very kind, looked at me and nudged Frank Gordon to invite me to dance. Poor fellow. He came to me and said, under his breath, "Can I have the next dance?" Whereupon I looked up and said, in my French accent, "No, thank you. I am not allowed to dance with boys because if I do, when I will be 17, I will become blasé." So you can imagine I was never asked to dance again. But I made up for it. Later on the bob floor, my brother and I, my brother Vivian, who was 3 years younger than I am, would go to the bob floor and they would have wonderful music. Quella was the dance du jour, and that is what we would do. We were cheered on by crowds of, in those days, colored young people. An unfortunate way of describing them, but anyway. And it was, on reflection, it is astonishing to me that we were so oblivious to, they were not allowed on that dance floor, and we were so oblivious to the injustice of that prohibition on reflection 67 years later. Anyway, so that is a clear memory. I also have memories of the vendors on the beach. Again, people of color who would shout, "Mangoes, mangoes, 4 for a shilling. Where the man goes, the woman goes." So that was a lovely, warm memory. I also remember all the lovely girls in my class. We lived across the road in Kensington Road, across the bridge, and we would travel on our bicycles. I would pick up Angela Simon on Windermere Road. And that, by the way, is the house where I learned to smoke cigarettes. I had my first Cavala king size, followed by Courtly. And there was never a shortage of cigarettes. We were always smoking. Nothing made us feel, more sophisticated and grown up than that. Then we would go and pick up Esther Garb on Dartmouth Road, and then Esther Garb and Dinky Caston, Eva Singer, Ellen Hirschfeld, and ride all the way up to school. When I got to school, the first day I ever got to school in Muizenberg, we were having an English class with Mr. Hillhouse. And at the end of that class, I remember the young boy behind me handing me a drawing of the back of my head. I had curly hair, very curly hair. And I thought it was such a sweet, tender gesture and so welcoming. That boy was Frank Lazarus, who is still a good friend. And then there were all the other lovely boys in my class. There was Henry Brown, Roger Tabakan, Barnett Shapiro. This is what happens, in the middle of the night. Instead of counting sheep, that's what we do. I just conjure up all these names. Barry Young, I was in love with Barry Young. Barry Young was the drum major in the cadet band. So dashing and not Jewish, which was always a little exciting on the side. I would come home and my mother on a regular basis would say to me, "Who are you in love with today?" She had expectations that I would be in love all the time. And I would say, "Well, today it's Barry Young." And she'd say, "Okay, well, we don't need to stay with that. We can move on." And that would change. I'm going to be discreet and not mention all of the others. I'm just trying to think what else. Oh, I remember going to bazaars on Friday nights with all the boys and girls. Coming home and walking along the Flay on moonlit nights with boys and girls. And remember my first kiss. You don't want to know about that, do you? Okay, I won't tell you about that. But then the kisses went further because we went up on Boys Drive, and that was when it really got serious. But we'll stop there. We have a rabbi listening and we'll behave.
Okay.
Do you want me to stop now, Rabbi? Is it enough?
No. Keep going.
Oh.
Whenever you feel. A few more minutes is fine. If you want
He's
to.
Run.
Somebody's, I can hear somebody talking.
I don't know.
Forgive me, I'm just going to just check my notes and see what else I've left out. Oh, my mother was a character in Muizenberg. You can imagine she was born in Egypt and she was very foreign, very foreign. If I was foreign, she was more foreign, you know, a generation more foreign. So she was a little bit of an embarrassment to me because I so desperately wanted my mother to look like everybody else, like Mrs. Garb and Mrs. Caston, and she didn't. She would wear sort of outlandish things that you wished your mother wouldn't wear, and she would smoke cigarillos, and she would make us memorable sandwiches. And I will tell you about these sandwiches because they're worth hearing about. Again, to my great embarrassment, they were made of grilled eggplant, roasted red peppers, with a spread of baba ganoush, hummus, and a whole collection of olives. So as I'd unwrap the sandwich in the class, everybody would go, "Sis, sis, that's disgusting." Anyway, it was mortifying. One day somebody said, "Can I have a bite?" And I said, "Sure." They had a bite and that was it. I never ever ate my own sandwiches. Everybody wanted to swap and I ate everybody else's little peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, nothing special. I think that's about it. I can't think of anything more that I've left out. You know.
Well, thank you, Lolita. Yeah, do you want to maybe say a closing thought? All
right. So what I want to say is this, that it was only 8 years in my life, but those were memorable 8 years. There were years where, as a child growing up, one hears so much about bullying and children being excluded. I never felt that. We were welcomed by families, by the Trapplers and the Weinrachs. We always felt enveloped by acceptance and kindness. And that is what we cherish. We remember Muizenberg with gratitude. And when we can't sleep, instead of counting sheep, what we do is remember the faces of Henry Brown and Roger Tobacco and Leonard and Ivor, what was his name?
Pistolsky.
No, not Ivor Pistolsky.
Ivor Barnett.
Barnett and Mervyn Penn. And that's what we do. We just try to remember names, and it is always with fondness and affection. That's it.
Thank you so much, Lolita. And thank you also, Jack. We've got some interesting comments. Lolita Ruth Reichman remembers your mother and how enthusiastic she was. We got other people saying that you're young. What I'm going to say is, although you didn't dance at your first dance, disco dance or whatever it was, you're not too old to dance. I hope that you and Jack have moonlit serenades every night in Vancouver. You deserve it. Tonight is a blood moon, so hopefully you get there. Thank you so much for volunteering to speak, and it was great to hear you. I'm just going to remove the spotlight and then go on to Ian, who's our next speaker. So Ian is talking about Muizenberg Never Ending Fun. Ian was born in Elric Main Road Retreat at home as his mother had chickenpox and could not go to the maternity hospital in 1949. So he was a home-born baby. He spent his first 8 years there, yet it was virtually the same as growing up in Muizenberg. Went to Muizenberg Junior High School, spent his spare time in Muizenberg with his friends, continuously at the beach, then moved to Muizenberg, attending the high school there. At age 19, he relocated to Sea Point. One of his school holiday jobs was renting out deck chairs at the Snake Pit. He must have been Mr. Popular at the Snake Pit, renting out chairs. He is a retired medical doctor, qualifying both undergraduate and postgraduate degrees from UCT Medical School. He practiced in both Cape Town and Benoni, Gauteng. He has 5 children and 5 grandchildren, with hopefully more to come, meaning his grandchildren, not his own children. Thank you, Ian. I'm going to now, unmute yourself. I'm going to make you the spotlight. Thank you for volunteering to speak. I know that there's been people around the world who've been asking about you to me. So it's nice to see you here, and go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I have tried to train myself throughout my adult life in the art of keeping my emotions under control, keep a lid on them, and have been quite successful. But there is one situation where these emotions just bubble over. That is when I talk about, see pictures about, read about, or even think about my beloved Muizenberg. There are 2 emotions which come to the fore. One is large in volume and the other much smaller. The large volume emotion is related to joy and happiness and fun, which describes my life growing up in Muizenberg. The lesser emotion is one of sadness. The sadness emotion is about my Muizenberg Chaverim who have passed on or who have moved elsewhere in the world. Obviously, there's been no contact with these friends for many, many decades. And yet when I close my eyes, I can vividly see their faces and clearly hear their voices just as before. It's as though we are together again, age 15. With us Muizenberg folk, no matter the difference in age, financial status, education, or social standing, we were all so close, so supportive of each other. We genuinely cared for one another. We practiced Klal Yisrael, Jews caring about other Jews. Don't get me wrong, I did have non-Jewish friends. In fact, 3 of the 12 boys in my group were Christian, and we related to them in the same way. You see, Muizenberg bound us all together. We all shared the same affection for the place. It helped mold our characters and influenced in a big way who we would become. At this early stage of my talk, I would like to mention a woman who has played a pivotal role in rekindling the fire of Muizenberg that lies deep within us all. That is Joy Kropman, who was instrumental, with a little help from others, in creating a magnificent exhibition titled Memories of Muizenberg. This occurred around 2010. It was displayed in the Jewish Museum at Hatfield Road in Cape Town and also in Johannesburg. The exhibition was also filmed to be broadcast on TV as part of the Jewish program Simcha. I believe it somehow traveled around the world to huge acclaim. They say you can't take the Jewish neshama out for the Jew. Sorry. Likewise, you can't take Muizenberg out of the Shtetl by the sea, Jew. Now, some of the previous speakers in the last few weeks were older than me, some much older, but all the speakers so far came across as refined, cultured, and erudite folk. And I'm sure we're like that growing up in Muizenberg. Me and my friends, also my brother Barry and his friends, Barry was 5 years older than me, were quite different. There was nothing refined or cultured about us as youngsters. Rough and ready, very physical guys. I mean, we went at a very young age, say about 13, to parties and youth socials throughout the peninsula. A social could attract 150 to 200 youngsters. We traveled to Claremont, Highlands, Sea Point, Fishhook, and of course back home in our beautiful pavilion. We also imbibed in Bacchus's gift to the world, namely alcohol. The favorite being Lieberstein, a sweet white wine at R1.10 a 1.5 liter bottle, or bigger quantities from a papzak or feitje. Physical fights at parties were fairly common. At 15 years of age, I had my nose broken by a short-handed baseball bat. Now I will tell you how perfect Muizenberg was for us physical guys, with non-stop fun the order of the day. At low tide, we would stand at Surface Corner and start to jog on the hard exposed sea sand. Jog past Sunrise Beach, all the way past Strandfontein to Macassar and Swartklip, where present-day Mitchell's Plain touches. A distance of probably 8 or 9 kilometers. Without stopping, we turned and jogged back to Surface Corner, an 18-kilometer great run. We swam, body surfed, board surfed, and fished in that amazing False Bay Sea all year round. That sea temperature was so perfect. Not too warm like, say, Hawaii or Eilat, not too cold like, say, Clifton or the English Channel. The only other place I experienced sea like that was in Nice and Cannes on the French Riviera, where you paid about $5,000 a night at a hotel. Then the majestic, awe-inspiring mountain in Muizenberg. So close you could almost touch it. We climbed it often, sometimes to the top and across to Oudtshoorn, where we would be picked up by car. Or next door to the Kalkbay Mountains to explore the myriad of caves there, such as the Devil's Pit and the Labyrinth. We did rugby training. We all played the great game of rugby union. We trained on the sand dunes next to the mouth of Sandflay, where it enters the sea. And finally, the almost always present southeaster blowing off the sea, bringing healthy sea ozone to us and keeping air pollution down to a minimum. A lot of fun making and flying kites, using strips of bamboo as a skeleton, tissue paper to cover, and liquid dough to stick the paper down. Also a long material tail. I mentioned Sandflay. What a wonderful natural tidal sea lagoon. The mouth was regularly dredged to keep it deep and allow the sea to rush in at high tide. We would jump from the promenade into the mouth as the sea poured in, get washed under the big bridge, and climb out the other side of the bridge. The flay abounded with sea life, fish such as elf, harders, springers. A springer is a giant harder. Leervis, also called garrick, and steenbras. There were prawns to be pumped and even shrimp under the reeds alongside the bank. We sailed on the Vlei mostly in dabchicks, a flat-bottomed 7-foot-long boat. There was an important second factor to consider, which allowed us to enjoy the fun at Muizenberg even more. That is the time in history we found ourselves there. No TV, no computers, no cell phones, no Netflix, no Showmax, no computer games, so no distractions. Granted, there was the Empire Cinema, but it showed the same movie for 2 to 3 weeks at a time, which limited viewing. The real beauty of Muizenberg was not the mountain. It was not the sea. It was not jogging on the beach. It was the people. Heimische, good people, but also interesting original characters abounded. None more so than the legendary Cedric Kushner. Cedric was no academic. Failing standard 7, I'm not sure what that is in today's grade, 3 times. After the 3rd failure, Wally Gordon, our high school headmaster, called him in and said, "Kushner, either you leave the school or I do." Cedric duly left. His average mark for school subjects was 28%, except for bookkeeping and commercial, where he regularly scored around 88%. Why so? His grandfather paid him each time he came for extra lessons in that subject at the grandfather's house 5 days a week. Cedric had one real talent. He was a great organizer, like an impresario, I suppose. He organized a Sunday rugby league consisting of 15 teams around the peninsula, playing each Sunday in the rugby season. He sorted out the fields, the referees, and the team's roster. Now, he was considerably overweight with huge, thunderous legs, which made him incredibly slow. Because he was the league organizer, we were compelled to include him in the Muizenberg side called the Spurs. He had never scored a try in his rugby career, understandably. One Sunday, we found ourselves 48-0 up at half-time against the traffic department and reckoned this could be Cedric's chance to score a try. So we are 5 meters from the opponent's try line. Most of their players have been tackled. We get the ball to Cedric. The try line is open. Amazingly, he couldn't cover those 5 meters to score a try. The opposition nailed him. As a lot of you might know, Cedric became a very successful boxing promoter, working out of New York City. He frequently came to South Africa to promote our fighters and never failed to contact his Muizenberg buddies. A word now about our high school headmaster, Wally Gordon, or as we nicknamed him, a Pop Cat Wallitus. Now, Wally liked to dish out corporal punishment, also known as caning or simply cuts. He used a thin but strong piece of hard bamboo and put a lot of effort delivering these cuts on your posterior. It was pretty sore. We, the boy pupils, realized after a while that Wally's eyesight was not great, even though he wore glasses. So we worked at a plan when getting, as he used to say, 6 of the best, caned 6 times. He would stand in his office. Wally would go into the storeroom to get the cane. You quickly moved alongside the big office desk, so when you bent over, your behind was in line with the side of the desk. When Wally delivered the hit, he actually hit the desk and not you. As long as you let out a small groan with each strike, Wally believed he was giving you the punishment you deserved. Mervyn Rosenberg mentioned in his talk that he was a photographer with movie snaps, a company that employed 5 or 6 mostly university students who during summer vacation took photographs of people enjoying the beach at Muizenberg. They walked the entire beach, including Sunrise Beach. You had your snap taken with a Leica camera and given a card with a number on. The next day at Balmoral Beach, where Movie Snaps had the kiosk, the previous day's photographs were displayed on a big board. You found your snap, and if it pleased you, presented the card and purchased it. Now, every single summer, one of the photographers named Alec Gelser outsold everyone by a mile. Because in all of these shots, the people in the shot were smiling from ear to ear and others were laughing. It remained a mystery until my brother Barry, who was also a photographer, was walking down the beach. 10 meters in front of him and facing him was Gelser getting ready to take a shot. Now Gelser was tall, so he crouched down to get a good picture. He wore a loose bathing trunk without any underpants, and Barry noticed a part of Gelser's anatomy peeping out from under the trunks, if you know what I mean. Obviously, the people having the photograph taken smiled and laughed greatly. When Gelser straightened up, the thing returned back from whence it came. Amazingly, Gelser had no idea what was happening, and even though Barry spread the word, no one ever told Gelser about it. I have, lastly, an anecdotal story about myself, but I think it might bore you people, because I don't think there are many people interested in fishing here. Should I say it?
Go for it, go for it. Yeah,
Tell the
let's hear it.
fishing story. It's a good one.
Okay, okay. So I was hooked on fishing. Sorry for the pun. None of my friends were interested. None of my brother's friends were interested. But I did find someone in Muizenberg to come with me, and that was Stephen Pavitsky. Now, the best place to fish in Muizenberg was Bailey's Cottage. And the best time to go was at night when the tide was high. And in the 50s and 60s, False Bay was awash with fish. And the main fish you caught at Bailey's Cottage was a kabeljau, or otherwise known as a cob, a great eating fish. You might sometimes get a stemrose. So Stephen and I, at 6:45 in the evening, set off from my house in Dartmouth Road, which is a bit of a schlep to Bailey's Cottage. We start fishing at 7:15. High tide was at 10:30 that night. Come 9:30, we've caught nothing. Stephen reckons we should pack it in. Me being obsessed with this, said, I'm going to wait for the very high tide. So Stephen reckoned he was going to pack it in. I said, I'm staying on. So there I was, 13 or 14, alone at 9:30 at night at Bailey's Cottage. There was a big stormwater drain right there. And at night, the rats came out to forage. And to me as a kid, they looked about the size of a Jack Russell Terrier. So it wasn't a great place to be. However, at 10:15, I get a huge strike. I strike back and I'm onto something big. Now the excitement is going. It was big and I was fighting it. And I was hoping that it wasn't a shark. 20 meters out in the ocean, I see a silver tail come out and I realize it's a kabeljau. Now the adrenaline is really rushing through me. The one problem with Bailey's Cottage is that it's rocky. And sure enough, 7 meters from the shoreline, my fish is caught in the rocks. There was no way that I was going to lose this fish. I put down the rod, followed the line out with my hands, waded into the sea fully clothed, up to my neck until I found the fish under the water, wedged into the rocks. I got its gills and extricated it from the rocks and with great difficulty dragged it onto the land. It turned out to be a 32-pound kabeljau, and I was in ecstasy. However, I realized I had a problem. The problem was, how do I drag this fish in my tackle all the way back to Dartmouth Road? So I was in a quandary. And then I thought, what about the police station? It's right here. It's right next door to Bailey's Cottage. Maybe I can get a lift back in the van. But it's a long shot, but it's the only shot I got. So I drag the fish under the small subway where the railway line is, and I leave it on the pavement on the street. You might remember where the police station was, the old police station, on the main road, opposite Bailey's cottage, right next to Princess Darby's mansion. You then walk up a lot of steep steps, and I realized that I had to be on my best behavior. So I said, "Good evening, Sergeant, sir." "Yes, what do you want?" he says. I said, "Look, I've caught a big fish and I can't get it home to Dartmouth Road. Can you give me a lift?" "Don't be ridiculous, man," he says. I said, "Please, look out the window." He opens the window, looks down on the pavement and sees the fish, and he turns around and says, "Jan, get the van." Into the back of the van, fish into the back of the van, and all the way home. That's it. See why
Thank
I love
you, Ian.
See why I
Thank
love
you.
Pittsburgh.
Wow. Well, Ian, it's a pleasure to meet you here via Zoom. Your stories were fantastic, as Lolita's were. I especially love the caning one and the fishing one that you ended with, as well as the photography one. Hysterical, and I'm sure there were comments, so just check chat. And thank you for that. Now going from food of fish to another type of food, which is cooked fried fish for kiddishes, is Jean Toker, our next speaker, who I asked to speak about the Muizenberg Schule, as well as the Ladies Guild at the Schule. Jean is still actively involved in the synagogue. She lives around the corner. She still walks to Schule on Shabbos. And I'm sure most of you know Jean, and I'll just give her a brief bio for those who don't remember her or know her, but I'm sure most of you do. Born Jean Ginsberg in 1938, is that correct? In Heatherdean Nursing Home, now the site of the Killarney Heights Flats. After 6 months, returned with mother to family home in Langsberg. Attended junior school in Jan Kempdorp and senior school in Kimberley. After matriculated, attending UCT and Cape Technion. In 1959 and returned to Muizenberg in 1964 with their two daughters, Charlene and Beverly. Solly had previously purchased a pharmacy in Muizenberg, and though Jean was committed to helping him, she found time to pursue her interests in the arts. Opened the Muizenberg Art Center in 1971 with the support of Ivan Sachs, chairman of the Muizenberg Publicity Association, and organized regular art exhibitions and lectures. Next to the pharmacy, she ran Trifles and Treasures, selling objects d'art. After the ultimate death of Solly in 1993, she closed the pharmacy and opened Jean Toker Estates, which she ran until she retired in 2016. She has 2 children, 6 grandchildren, and 1 great-grandchild. Mazel tov on your recent great-grandchild. Jean, I'm going to make you the spotlight, and please share with us whatever you wish.
I'm going to read because otherwise I would be making a big mess. Celebrating Life is the title of a book I recently read by the late Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, but it is the subtitle that has resonated with me, which reads, Finding Happiness in Unexpected Places. For me, Muizenberg Schule and Guild encapsulated that phrase, as both have been very close to my heart. When we joined Muizenberg Schule as a family in 1963, my husband was very chuffed to tell me he had secured a front row seat for me. I felt very privileged, even though it was next to a pillar. Available, I suspected, as no one else wanted it, but it suited me very well, as our 2 young daughters, Charlene and Beverly, could sit next to me on the stairs, where I thought I had more control over the running in and out of Schule during services. It has been a challenge to condense 55 years of serving on the Schule and Guild committees into about 10, maximum 15 minutes. So I chose as my theme to connect the dots by mentioning a few of the presidents and recalling some memorable and special events. My introduction to Schule affairs was via the Talmud Torah Committee around 1966. And I recall the chairmanships of Mr. Sam Zauber and Mrs. Judith Gerson. It was a very active committee and a frenzy of fundraising in the form of dinners, dances, knitting and cake sales ruled the day. Back then, Cecile Buski was also a committee member, And here we both are, well in our 80s, still soldiering on. She is the capable and efficient Schul secretary, and myself wearing 3 hats. Mr. Zauber was determined to fill a vacuum in the Schul until Torah. And at the time, and after a visit to Israel in 1969, he arrived back with a newlywed young couple, Rabbi Avram Bigler and his beautiful wife, Adassa. Both adults and children loved them. And as the numbers attending Schul services increased, it was attributed to the arrival of the young couple. They taught the children all the songs that were sung during services, and this increased their enjoyment, participation, and willingness to attend Schul.
There's nothing, yeah.
At this time, Matthew Israelson was president, and wife Lovell was chair lady of the Ladies' Guild.
Hey.
Between them, they took the young couple under their wings and introduced them to life in South Africa, and more specifically, Muizenberg. Matthew handled the Schul affairs with Avram, and Lovell taught Hadassah the secrets of fine cooking and baking. When Matthew's term ended in 1971, Mr. H.L. Stern, known to all as Bertie, became president. Apart from Schul, he was also well known in the secular life of Muizenberg and Cape Town. A dignified gentleman, rather stern, to make a pun. Meetings were disciplined and ended no later than 9 p.m. He made history in the town when he returned to university in old age and gained another degree. The Constitution stated presidents were only eligible to serve 2-year terms. So in 1973, Abe Davis began his term, and he and Bertie alternated as presidents on multiple occasions. Rabbi Rockman was appointed by popular choice in 1983, and he, together with Avram Bigler, with whom we had remained friends and who came specially for the occasion, jointly officiated in 1985 at the wedding of our daughter Charlene to Herzl Meyers. It was the first wedding in the Muizenberg Schul in most people's memory. Theo Zartz and his choir from Rondebosch Schul enthralled the guests with their repertoire of beautiful songs. Back to Abe. A committee meeting with him was a lesson in affability, and patience. No amount of heated discussion could ruffle
I don't want to be rude and leave the meeting, so.
And I seem to remember he had his share of address. Time was marching on, and the membership of the congregation was shrinking when in 1987, it was Harold Shapiro's turn to be president. He remained in the chair for the next 6 years.
Do you have yourself on mute?
Could people mute, please?
You're on mute? Okay. You sure?
It would be remiss of me not to mention Frida, his loyal wife, who was the able, efficient, and remarkable secretary for 25 years. She was an incredibly staunch and supportive helpmate to Harold, and together they devoted their time and energy to the welfare and support of the Schul. In 2001, Ziggy Safer was elected president for the next 9 years. Another presidential record was set. During his presidency, a very vital decision was taken at a special general meeting of the congregation. By majority vote in 2003, it was decided to sell the Herzl Hall, which had proved to be a financial burden. What few people knew was that the title deeds to the hall had serious disadvantages for such a sale. Following on Ziggy in 2010, Morris Struhl joined the ranks of presidents. Morris was a gentleman to be reckoned with, efficient, dynamic, and demanding of himself and his committee. When Morris set his mind to fundraising, nobody could refuse him. Visitors and locals were powerless when Morris was in gear, and the sponsorship of many summer brochures and the fundraising for the Boberoffel facilities were due to his sterling efforts. Regrettably for us, Morris and wife Dawn made Aliyah, but lucky for us, left Muizenberg Hebrew congregation in the capable hands of their son, Farrell. I'm coming back to Farrell after I take you on a journey with the Ladies Guild. I mentioned Lovell Israelson as chair lady, but many generations passed by before I stepped into her shoes. Mrs. Navius had been chair and had decided to retire. All the ladies were enthusiastic to carry on, but there was a deathly silence when she mentioned chair lady. The guild was then an autonomous body with its own membership, which charged a yearly fee and even had its own banking account. However, as time passed on, the shul and guild converged, and as results have shown, the marriage has been a very satisfactory one. Back to the Herzl Hall. There was the heart that pumped the blood. Over the years, every major activity took place in the hall, from cheder lessons, putting fancy dresses, dances, cake sales, dinners, meetings, school exams, auctions, an art exhibition by our own Chaim Menashehoff, at one time a nursery school, and finally a long-term tenant who ran a play center for young children until 2 years ago. At the peak of Muizenberg's popularity during the 1970s, the shul had standing room only during the summer season. After shul, the entire congregation trooped down to the hall, where the Ladies Guild had been preparing the brocha since 6:30 a.m. We had seating for 400, and each week set 40 tables with a famous kichel made by Ray Cohn, special biscuits of Frieda Shapiro, and the joint efforts of Pearl Davis, Cecile Buski, Renee Bloch, Lee Eidelman, Rachel, Ronnie Alon, and myself. Imagine, on each table, we counted and placed one drink, one plate of herring, one basket of kichel, one plate of biscuits, and lots of potato crisps for the many campers from Lakeside Bikuchulim camp, who for many years walked over each Saturday. When Abel Pearl's grandson, Shane, son of Marlene and Neville Stanger from America, was to have his bar mitzvah in Muizenberg shul, the guild was invited to do the brocha. But Marlene had some original ideas and requested a buffet, which was rather a novel form of catering for the guild at that time. But thanks to Marlene, it changed our modus operandi, and thereafter, we only needed to be at the hall at 7:30 a.m., as buffets were so much simpler to manage. Shavuot and everyone focused attention on decorating the shul. Then the Benoth Zion ladies joined forces with the guild, and together we transformed the shul into a veritable indoor garden with greenery, flowers, and assorted fruits brought in baskets by the children. Names that come to mind then are Sylvia Borrock, Rose Schulman, Jeanette Derman, Fanny Bloch, Sandy Greenblow, Sadie Juter, Fanny Eisman, Lily Lieb, Molly Shaper, Kay Boyd, Bertha Abramson, to remembering but a few. A constant and irreplaceable friend and sponsor of the shul was late Mendel Kaplan. Each summer, he delivered the State of the Nation address, which gave us an overview and insight into local as well as global affairs. Much discussion in committee now revolved around building a new suitable facility next to the shul. We still had the influx of summer visitors, and Mendel offered the congregation a rand for every rand we raised. Our honorary treasurer, Leon Morris, wide and dedicated, became the driving force behind the project. Before long, builders appeared on the premises, and for 1 year, the Ladies Guild served brochas standing around a trestle table in the lobby of the shul. And after the brocha, our devoted and longtime caretaker, Manuel, washed the dishes in plastic containers. Today, we have the wonderful Boba Rochel facility, thanks to the foresight and generosity of our late friend. Sadly, he did not live to enjoy the first brocha the Ladies' Guild prepared to honor him in 2001 as he passed away suddenly. Since its construction, we have celebrated bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, Shabbat and festival dinners, oofroofs, and a variety of other activities. Jane Serembach and myself, with Cecile always in the wings ready to help, have kept the Shabbat brochas up to standard for the last 10 years. Regrettably, since the COVID epidemic, our doors have been closed. However, we do miss our regular Shabbat morning attendees. Monica Jacobson, Ruth Carnison, Ruth Reichlin, Melanie Shirk, Shirley Rabin, Nan Scholle, Vivian Ziskin, our expert chiffon baker, and those gentlemen who made up the minyanim, evenings and mornings, Stephen Wise, Alan Jones, Colin Levine, Ari Ziskin, Jaime Rosenstein, Alan Fagenbaum, Herschel Ginsberg, Morris Ross, Abe Kasper, Neil Solipsky, Julian Brooke, and sadly, those who passed away, Safa, Dr. Harry Burzen, and Brian Dice. And we must not forget all our friends from Glendale. And so I return to the present and our youngest ever president of the shul, Farrell Struhl. When Farrell was still a student and after Rabbi Rockman had retired in 1999, Farrell stepped into the breach and led the services with Chaim Menashehoff reading the Torah. Theo Zartz and his three sons made up half of the choir of 8. And with Farrell as Chazan, our shul services were comparable to any. Farrell once shared with me that his wife's worst fears were that the shul may close its doors under his watch. Luckily, those fears have been allayed, as 2 very important and far-reaching events have occurred during his presidency. The Herzl Hall, 18 years after that fateful decision, has finally been sold. The onerous terms stated in the title deeds having been circumvented by a competent and extremely patient attorney, Ivan Klitzner, who battled for 2 years until the property was finally registered out of our possession. The second important event was the appointment of Rabbi Ryan Newfield. All of us on this Zoom call today are witness to Farrell's foresight in the choice of dynamic young Rabbi Ryan, who has proved during a stressful and challenging global era what can be achieved in the southern corner of Africa, our shtetl by the sea, with special acknowledgement to Hedy Davis, who has recorded our history in her book. I must add that Rabbi Ryan had chosen Muizenberg Shul in favor of many other options and took up his position with us a month before the first hard lockdown in South Africa. I conclude with another wise and powerful quote by Rabbi Sachs. Happiness is a close relative of faith, and we hope and pray that our faith, together with the faith of Rabbi Ryan and lovely wife Andrea and 2 young children, Chaya Tamima and Asha Abe, will strive to return Muizenberg Hebrew congregation once more to those halcyon days of the past. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Thank you so
Really,
much.
Rabbi?
And I'm not going to mention all the events that you've done, but one of the most, recent ones was we had 90 people for Purim in COVID times, which, you can ask yourself if that's a good idea or not. But we had 90 people, including close to 40 children at the synagogue running around in the Boba Rochel room, which I'm sure would have made the Captain family very happy, as well as everybody here. Bring them a smile, but there is still life going on and it is still powerful. So thank you very, very much for that, Jean. And you mentioned lots of names, which was an honor to many, many people. To end off, we're going to go to a different speaker who's talking about things from a completely different perspective. Gene, I'm just going to take the spotlight off you. And that is John Brandon Bluff, who didn't grow up in Muizenberg, didn't live in Muizenberg, but has been coming to Muizenberg for December and represents whole. He's speaking about December in Muizies is in his DNA, and he wrote thing in first person. I'll read you his bio, which is in first person. Muizenberg crept into my DNA before I was born. From the age of 1, my parents gave my sister and I the fortune of taking us on their annual Muizenberg December trips, a pleasant break from the mundane reality of everyday life in Pretoria, which I believe is where John Brandon still is. My father was lucky enough to purchase a family apartment in Arlington Court, which is across the road from where I live, and to this day is still a cherished asset of mine and my sister's, an asset that has the fondest of memories and much happiness from my youth, an asset that is still used by my niece and nephew, and please God will be passed on to their children to continue the Muizenberg legacy. Muizenberg, as well as its community, truly molded me into the person I am today. The many social gatherings, beach bat games, walks on the beachfront, and treasured family time taught me how to be an independent as well as a social, friendly, fun-loving person in all aspects of life. Every Muizenberg experience was a new and exciting one. Part of my life always remained priceless to me, my family, and its loyal community. I'm truly thankful for everything given to me by this wonderful place, and although my words could never do it justice, I hope to pay it somewhat of a valuable tribute. Now, John Brandon asked for a discussion, and I'm going to start off, but if anyone has any questions, please, unmute yourself and ask away. So John Brandon, tell us, coming from Pretoria, what was some of your favorite memory, or one or two memories that will stick with you for the rest of your life?
Well, firstly, some background to me and my family. My father was a lawyer in Pretoria, and my mom was a housewife. We came down to Muizenberg at the age of 1, and we rented a flat in Arlington Court from Gershie and Charlie Katz. They had the penthouse in Arlington, and we were there for about a few years, and then we in the early 70s. The building went under sectional title under Jeff Fabian, and we were staying at number 30 Arlington, and we purchased the unit. So that's a bit of the history to it. The memories are unbelievable memories of unbelievable people, friendships that we created. Just in the early days at Arlington, the courtyard in the back was like a Wimbledon courtyard. We used to play beach bats, soccer, cricket till all hours of the night, and most afternoons after the beach would come back to the apartment, and most people wanted to rest, have a schloff after the beach, but we decided that we have to play cricket and soccer. So a lot of people told us please to be quiet, but we carried on playing all hours of the night. Unbelievable place.
Thank you. And John, Brandon John, sorry. Can you list some of the people that influenced you? In your bio, you mentioned that it's a part of your life. It really changed your life coming to Muizenberg in December. Who were some of the people that were just generally influential in the world as well as influential in your life, and how did that affect you?
So there was Joe Davidovitz, and every time we went down to the beach, Joe would say to me, "Lekker by die see, A for away, B for Bombay, on like a scone." And those are the kind of memories we had with people like, the Eisenbergs, Zami and Denise Eisenberg. I know Denise is on the call. Alex Zingel, which was my neighbor. We've got a flat below us. He was from Durban. The Suttons were next door to him. In the early days, we had people like the Wilkes, the Gordons, Goody Gordon, who was a judge, and Max Rom, who also had a big influence in in my life in Muizenberg. Joe Davidovitz.
And John Brandon, we spoke earlier, you were mentioning to me that Muizenberg was the hub of business in South Africa. Many famous people who were influencing the whole country were hanging out in Muizenberg on the beach with you. Do you want to name some of them? And, maybe people can, envision seeing these people on the beach.
So the Natie and Izzy Kirsch were there every December. Benny Weinstein from Tastic Rice had a house just very close to us. Judge Alan Maggott, Max Rom, Richard Michael, Eric Sampson was in Muizenberg. There was Manny Rubenstein, who was the mayor of Muizenberg and did a lot of work for Muizenberg, and Bika Cholim in the early days at Lakeside, and helped a lot with the Struhl over December. Gerald Rubenstein, Moki Shochet, Archie Erin, Arnold Bassarabi, Jeff Davis, Norman Harris, the Struhls, Harry Bloom, the Ringo, Stan Ringo, the Rap, Lawrence Rap, Harry Swaden, Dudley Rubin, Alec Wapnick, Ronnie Bass, Morris Sacher, Goldberg, Dr. Benny Goldberg, Sylvia Goldberg. I've actually got a lovely story about Sylvia Goldberg. She was in the bottles. They had liquor stores in a big liquor store in the hypermarket in Johannesburg. And one day I was in the bottle store in Muizenberg, and there was Sylvia talking to some foreigner about wine. And the owner of the bottle store was just looking on while Sylvia explained to him where the wines came from, who the winemaker was. She knew everything about wine. She was an unbelievable lady, and they absolutely, the Goldbergs loved Muizenberg. But going back in the mornings, we used to outside Arlington Court in the mornings, we used to have a walk and a run. So in the early days, we used to run from Muizenberg to Fischhoek. Myself, Zami Eisenberg, Alex Zingel, Ian Eisenberg, and we used to run to the Shell garage in Fischhoek, have a drink, and then run back to Muizenberg. And then later on in life, in later years, we would meet at 7:30 every morning outside the building. Myself, Alex Zingel, George Gear, Mies Eisenberg, Zami Eisenberg, Shani Eisenberg, Sonia Sutton, and Margarita Rom, and we used to walk from Muizenberg along the walkway all the way to Cork Bay, have a drink at the Olympic Cafe, and then walk back to Muizenberg. Those were the most unbelievable days. The other things I always remember, Max Rom, he was training on the pavilion every morning. He ran up and down on the pavilion. He was a very, very fit man. All these beautiful stories. And then we also used to play beach bats in the mornings. So Joe Davidovitz would arrange a beach bat game on the back of the men's toilet by the wall. It was like a curved wall. And we would get 4 or 5, 6 guys. I think Max even came to play with us in the mornings. And we would play bats there. And it was called Pitts Putts, beach bats, Pitts Putts on the wall. And Joe Davidovitz was very instrumental in this wonderful beach bat game. Every morning at 8 o'clock, we'd play beach bats in the early days. Unbelievable.
And John Brandon, what was it like being a foreigner in Muizenberg in December?
Yeah, we had a few issues with at the Majestic Cafe in Muizenberg when some of the Muizenbergers didn't like the foreigners, the Transwaalers that came into Muizenberg. We had one day we had an altercation at the cafe where they called the burgers the Joe Burgers. We don't like the burgers from Joe Burgers. So what happened was we had a bit of an altercation. We said we don't like the Tonians, the Cape Tonians. And we had a bit of a ruckus there, but it was all in good, keen fun in those years. Muizenberg also had wonderful surf shops. I don't know, we had the corner surf shop, we had, which was one of the first surf shops in South Africa, I think. And then Teach Paul, which was a second surf shop. So lifestyle surf shop. And I used to go and get my first surfboard from the surf shop, my boogie boards. The first surfboard, I think, was a polystyrene surfboard.
John Brandon, these days, the surf shops, they're so full. I went to a sale of surfboards in November. There were 50 people before opening at 7 a.m. 50 people waiting in line during COVID to buy surfboards. So that's still going on. Do you want to close with any stories about putt-putts? Because I know that was one of your, the visions of Muizenberg, or any other things that you can think of just to close up before we go to the public.
Yeah, so putt-putt, rushing on the beach. I would walk up and down the beach during the season, looking for a game of beach bets. So I'd either play beach bets with Gary Kahn, who's still today a very dear friend of mine, and Mandy Yachat, also a very dear friend of mine today. And Mandy played unbelievable beach bets. He had such unbelievable ball sense, Mandy. So just got also one is also going to talk about the trek fishermen. We used to walk up and down the beach looking further up past the Sunrise Beach and looking for the trek fishermen during the season, which was unbelievable to watch them pulling in fish, sometimes even sand sharks, harders, steenbras, galjoen, white stumpneers, elf. Beautiful to watch. Also the horses in the mornings. People should bring down their race horses in the early mornings to play in the water when there's to train. Those are unbelievable memories. And we also must never forget sitting on the beach waiting for the Gatti's ice cream, the famous Grenadella Gatti's ice lolly with the pips. My parents always said to me, you can only have one ice lolly today. When we used to come back from our walks in the morning, which was interesting, my father used to say to me, go and put the chairs and the umbrella out on the beach. Because Muizenberg was very full in those years. And it caused quite a bit of a rumpus in the mornings because we used to take over we started Y73 on the beach. And they had two rows of booths in those years. We had the Y booths in the front and the Z booths in the back. So we should go out early and put out the windbreakers and then put out the chairs. But some mornings, people used to get upset and when the time we got to the beach, our chairs were all folded up. So we had to make sure that they didn't take our chairs away, which was interesting because there was a lot of demand for space on the beach. One day, Paul, Nathan, and I were playing beach bets on Boxing Day on the beach, and there was a packed day. It was the most beautiful day ever. And the beach security came and arrested us, and they took us to the charge office, which was the back below the pavilion in the corner. And they wanted to charge us for playing beach bets on a busy day on the beach. And I think the first thing my parents, when we got to Muizenberg, my parents did for me was to go and buy me a season ticket at the putt-putt. The putt-putt for me in those years was the most unbelievable place. So I used to arrange putt-putt tournaments twice a week on a Monday and a Thursday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon for all the youngsters in Muizenberg. So we used to either give, in the early days, we should give putters away and T-shirts. And then we used to give free games away with vouchers to the winners and T-shirts of Putt-Putt Muizenberg. So I became very close to the owner, which is no longer around, but one has got to, I've actually got a photo of him here. I'm going to give you some photos now. I'll show you some photos. His name was Noel Jarvitz, and his son Shane. And they ran the putt from Muizenberg, I don't know, for 45 years as far as I remember. And they loved having tournaments and the youngsters around. They tried to create matches and games. You also mustn't forget the boats and the train, the old boats and the train. Every day we used to go bumper boats and the train. In the mornings there was a variety show at the stage on the big lawn. There was Miss Muizenberg one every December. All the beautiful young girls from uptown having Miss Muizenberg. There were variety shows, Max Polly, there was hypnotists every morning, and we couldn't wait to see the beautiful the shows every day. As we went to the beach, we had to check on the wall by the men's toilets the temperature of the sea to make sure that water was warm. Every day the water changed. There was another chap by the name of Hami Fleischer. Hami and I would walk up Boys Drive. Now and I would walk up Boys Drive and up Jacob's Ladder, and then we walk back to Muizenberg, and he would make me do sit-ups and press-ups before we had to swim. So it was also unbelievable. Pictures of Muizenberg with my days before we go.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see that. You just see. That's my nephew Dylan. He was very, very cute in those years. My niece Jenna Lee Kilov, also on the beach. Here's a photo of Max Rom in my flat with Alon Rom. I don't know if you can really see that, but Max was very young. I think they just arrived in Muizenberg. Here's a photo of my sister Haley and Tammy Eisenberg Hertz, best friends still today. They met in Muizenberg many, many years ago, and that's to talk about friendship. Here's Noel at the putt-putt with me. Noel was the owner of the putt-putt in Muizenberg. I don't know if you can see that. Many, many years ago. Here's another photo of the putt-putt. There's a photo of the Arlington on this day without the wall around it. There's no wall around it in those years. Here's my late dad sitting on the beach. My father used to go and get wood at the where they fix the chairs on the beach, and used to take a magnifying glass and sit on the beach every day with a magnifying glass and a piece of wood and make stories about Muizenberg and people he had met and how beautiful the weather was and how beautiful the sea was, and used to give it to everyone. I think in Arlington, and I'm sure still people today in Arlington would have my dad's woodwork. There's my sister and her husband Russell on the beach. See that? Here's my favorite picture of myself, Zami Eisenberg and Alex Zingle outside the apartment on the way back from the beach. They were most unbelievable people, Zami particularly and Alec. And here's my mom and myself and Haley, my sister, in the apartment in Muizenberg. So those are just some of the.
Just check the comments, because some people have commented about ownership of putt-putts, and thank you very, very much. That was a very good exploration of the people who come in December. I knew quite a few names there. I did see Max Rom walking that promenade probably a year ago, so that's still happening. And now I'm going to open up to anyone who wants to comment. We don't have that much time, maybe for 10 minutes. If anyone wants to say something, just please mention your name first. And then we'll go to, I'll put just this. Does anyone want to say something? Just unmute yourself first. Carol Carlson, I see Carol putting up her hand.
Thank you.
Okay.
My name is Carol and I live in San Diego. I was always a dedicated visitor to Muizenberg, as we spent all December holidays with my grandparents, Tilly and Barney Dorman, who had retired to Muizenberg from Hout Bay in about 1949. The holidays were wonderful, filled with the beautiful beaches and the best swimming in the world. I wanted to ask you, did anyone, I missed a couple of things, mention a stuffed animal exhibition which took place in the pavilion when I was 7 years old? Would have been about 1949. I've got a picture of myself sitting on one of those animals with my nanny, and nobody seemed to come up with anything there. And also, did anybody know the Levinsons, who had the Jewish boarding school opposite the station? They used to have a lot of students coming from Rhodesia, and I'm a Carlson, so I was married to one of my sister-in-law was Jeanette Levinson. And she told me stories about that school and about Muizenberg that were unbelievable. But maybe we're going back a bit too far. It wasn't the Muizenberg community so much as my holidays were spent with all my cousins that lived in Cape Town. There were cousins from Belleville, there were cousins from Hout Bay. We'd all get together at our grandparents in Muizenberg, and we will never, ever forget it. It was unbelievable.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you. Does anyone want to answer Carol or say something else?
Yeah,
Just say your name first.
Mervyn Rosenberg.
Yes.
Becky, I see you there. Okay.
Rabbi, can I comment? It's Ruth Reichlin on what Carol mentioned about the stuffed animal, the stuffed lions. We too have family photographs taken on those lions.
Yes.
Many years ago. I was about 10 years old, so that must be about 70 odd years ago, but I do remember it very well indeed.
Oh, thank you. That's exciting because my pictures.
Thank you. And Mervyn wanted to say something as well.
Yes. What I want to say is, Rabbi, what you've done is absolutely fantastic, and everyone that has spoken has been absolutely incredible.
And how to go?
I do remember.
How do I get out of this?
In addition to the Struhl and the Tomatoro Hall, there was down at the bottom almost of Palmer Road, there was a Levinson's or Levin. I can't remember the name because I was about 4 years old. But there was someone there that used to have services there as well. Levinson or Levinstein, I can't remember. And what I want to add is that sitting in, that I've noticed over here, there is Mather and Gwen. And when I was 4 years old, their grandfather lived next to me. I'm talking of over 70 years ago, lived next to me. His surname was Wade. And I just want to mention that because it's this whole everything for me has been very, very emotional. And Rabbi, you are something else. That's all I can say. Thank you. And God bless you.
I would like.
Thank you, Mervyn.
Hi. Could I introduce the
Thank you.
Could I
Who was to talk?
living
Leon
member?
Loman.
Sorry, Rabbi. The Slomans. My sister, my late sister Esme, was friendly with one of them. They lived near us in Royal Road as well, and I grew up with her brother, Harold Hope. It's a bit of a mix-up.
Hello, Gina.
Hello,
Thank you, Mervyn. Now we're going to Leon's Loman.
Okay. Hello, Rabbi. Hello, everybody. I guess I have the doubtful distinction of being the oldest member of this very large group, and so my memories go back to the war as opposed to other people who've been talking about what's happened since the war. And so I just thought I'd say a couple of words about my class at school. The guy who was, I went to musical school, and the top guy in our class was a Barry Futon, who became a secretary of Kai, and we had Miriam Milner, who also went to Barkai, and then we had the person who came second in class was Dennis Crickler, who ended up as a Harley Street cardiologist. But I thought I'd just like to say a word about Jerry Schaefer, who was a very social guy, but also, I believe, active in the Communist Party. And Jerry went to medical school. I was in his class at medical school. And then he went to Uganda, I think at the time of Idi Amin. And then he went to my alma mater in London, England, the Royal Free Hospital. But the interesting thing about Jerry was that he had such a distinguished career that he was offered a knighthood by the Conservative government, and he declined it, saying that he would not wish to accept anything offered by the conservative government. On the other hand, he had a younger brother, Harold Schaefer, whom you talked about earlier, who worked with Frank Sinatra, earned quite a bit of money there. And Harold had a rather different idea. Harold's idea was that if you did not have a title, then you were a nobody. So Harold ended up buying a little village in England because the village carried with it a title. And so that's the story of Jerry and Harold Schaefer.
Thank you so much, Leon.
Rabbi.
There's people. Can I just say, some people have asked me to cut it, as well as the fact that we still have one more part. So I'd like to say one thing. Next week is not an official speaking. There are no official speakers. I'm asking everyone who would like to have a 5-minute personal story of what Muizenberg epitomizes to them. And we're going to try go through as many speakers as possible, one after the other, from 2 minutes to 5 minutes maximum. So that's what next week's going to be. So whoever hasn't spoken now, please think about, what you would like to say. We've already got some people already who have told me that they're going to speak, but that's what's going to be next week's discussion. I've got to, I think Mervyn wanted to say one last thing. We can maybe have one more comment after that, and then we must close the session. Mervyn, do you want to say one last thing?
Yes, what I want to say is that the oldest living Muizenberg person is at Highlands House. She turns 112 this year.
Oh, wow.
Her name is Rosaline Walpe. She was a Goldman, but she's the oldest living Muizenberg person. 112. She might be the oldest living person in South Africa.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, God bless her. God bless all of us with good health. Once again, thank you to the 4 speakers who were all fantastic. Thank you to everyone who commented in the comments. Whoever was a speaker, please read the comments and make sure that you read the comments. And then next week is going to be a closing, of which I'll give a special introduction next week, and we will conclude. And then I'll tell you how I intend on continuing with a Muizenberg series in a longer fashion, but more sporadically, and I'll tell you about that next week. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to end the call now, and it's been fantastic. I will send the recording. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rabbi. I appreciate it. It's been brilliant.
Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.